What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM here today, episode 534 for Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you haven't already, check out the Valentine's Day edition from a week ago with Alexis. She was on the show for the first time, I think, since the 500th episode, the live one, where the audio quality was awful. That was a botch on my part. This time was a much better outing, I would say, between Alexis and I on the show. Last week, check it out if you haven't already. We appreciate all the questions, the love, no pun intended, the Valentine's Day tie in there, that we got on the show, so I appreciate that very much. But today we're talking all your questions from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all the usual stuff. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. One last thing here before we get going. Big interview coming tomorrow here to the channel, first thing in the morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time. Also going up in article form on Bleacher Report around that same time, 8 a.m. Eastern. Also going to be up on WrestleRant Radio in audio form on Thursday, late Thursday. Full episode of the episode, or full audio of the episode available here on the channel on Friday, but the audio of the interview itself dropping very early on Thursday tomorrow. Big name, mentioned it on Instagram yesterday, but a wrestling goat, I would say, and someone I've had on my Mount Rushmore of interviews I would like to do for a very long time now, an interview wish list. Someone I've mentioned here on the channel before as far as, who would I like to interview? There's one name in particular on that list that I've now been able to cross off. That will be up here on the channel tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. That'll be at some point early on Thursday. So, that being said, let's get into the first question here. Jordan B. from YouTube. If Becky Lynch does lose the Elimination Chamber matchup, who do you see facing Becky at WrestleMania? The only person I can think of right now is Nia Jax. I mean, that would be it. It would be Becky and Nia. I still don't think Becky wins, or rather loses the Elimination Chamber match on Saturday. I feel like she kind of has to win. I feel like here's the thing. Rhea could face Liv, and I've said this a lot before. I think Rhea and Liv is a suitable Mania match. The only issue with that is that it makes Becky feel less than at WrestleMania. She was already in a multi-woman tag team match a year ago. That made sense. I mean, the Nia match would also make sense. She has yet to beat Nia. Nia beat her back at the Day 1 edition of Raw last month. So you can run that back, and then you can have Becky enter championship contention for SummerSlam. They could very easily wait until SummerSlam to do Becky and Rhea. But they've been so, hitting you over the head with it, to the point where you can also make the argument, it's too obvious to go in that direction. I don't know, that to me is a WrestleMania-worthy match, as is Liv and Rhea. So if Liv were to win, I would have no complaints. That would be an awesome win for her, especially if she were to beat Rhea. I feel like if she were to go to Mania and lose, that's not overly appealing. I think Becky can lose at Mania, and that would be totally fine with me. Rhea doesn't have to lose at WrestleMania, but, I think if she were to face Liv, I'd rather Liv get that big moment, be the first one to beat Rhea in 2 years since she last lost to Liv Morgan. I feel like it would be a full circle moment for Liv. But, it would probably be Becky and Nia. I don't think we have to even worry about that, wonder about that. I do think it's going to be Becky and Rhea for the Women's World Championship. But if for whatever reason Becky doesn't win on Saturday, I do think Becky and Nia would make the most sense. And I do think if Becky doesn't face Nia, and Becky's busy with Rhea, as I expect her to be, I think Jade is going to face Nia Jax at WrestleMania. A lot of people have asked me, what do you do with Jade? She's not in Elimination Chamber, blah, blah, blah. I'm glad she's not in the Chamber. She would have lost anyway. She was not winning the Chamber. She should not get pinned this early in her run. I know she was in the Rumble, but that didn't involve her getting pinned or submitted or whatever, so I was okay with that, and she had a great showing. I think at Mania, she can have her first singles match on TV, beat Nia, and I know that sounds like a fucking disaster on paper, I get it, but keep it short and sweet, make it like a harmless little match. Jade slams Nia as she did in the Rumble, have her win decisively, and have that be it. So that's what I would do. Jade and Nia, and then Becky and Rhea for the championship. SmackDown has their own women's matches, which I'll get to, later on. Liv would probably be left out of the equation unless it turns into a triple threat with Becky and Rhea, but it would be weird if Liv lost Elimination Chamber but still ended up in the match anyway. You could find a way to do that, but that's not... it kind of eliminates the point of the Elimination Chamber if you have Becky win decisively and then Liv ends up in there anyway. That would be kind of weird. Mike does it. A couple questions here from YouTube. Their first question was, Do you think WWE regrets giving Brock Lesnar the Undertaker's streak now that his name is tied to the Vince McMahon allegations? Good question. I've seen some people bring this up. I don't think they regret it. I really don't think they care. That was a decade ago. If the timing was different, let's say, and this was 10 years ago, the Vince stuff came, I mean, the Brock stuff was from a few years ago, not from 10 years ago. He's obviously guilty of other shit from over the course of his career. Nothing bad enough to get him canceled until now. The shit that came out about him recently is pretty fucking weird. And WWE was right to not use him for WrestleMania. He may never be back at this point. Honestly, they don't really even need him. It seems like it's too much of a headache anyway. But as far as the Brock Taker thing goes, it was 10 years ago. They haven't even brought up Brock being the one to end the Undertaker streak since like 2016, 2017 maybe. It's been a decade since it happened. Brock was already like a made guy. I don't think they regret it anyway, but I still wish they had kept Undertaker undefeated at WrestleMania. Brock did benefit. He kind of entered another level because prior to that point, he was winning and he was losing and he was a special attraction, but he kind of entered a new stratosphere of, wow, this guy's like on his own level. After ending the Undertaker's streak, I still would not have ended it. 10 years later, 10 years removed from that moment, I said it then, I say it now, I would not have had Brock end it, and I wouldn't have ended it, period. Allegations or not. Do they regret it now that he's, involved in the news with Vince? I don't really think they give a shit because they weren't really bringing it up anyway. But again, if this was 10 years ago, Brock had done this stuff in, let's say, 2013, 2012, and Brock had just ended the streak, and then he gets canceled, and then they can't bring him back, nor should they, then they might be regretting it. Now, probably not. His second question, should The Rock and Roman Reigns win the WWE Tag Team Championships on the road to their feud for next year's WrestleMania? I don't know if they need to. Like, the thing with The Rock, that would be cool. The problem there, though, is that Rock is not wrestling, I wouldn't think, regularly on TV. Now, I also said he wouldn't be turning heel 3 weeks ago, and we ended up getting that, which was cool last week with that first heel promo in like 12 years or 22 years, whatever, on SmackDown a week ago. So my point is, anything can happen, but I don't see Roman, or even Roman. I mean, the thing with like even Roman is that I didn't even want him winning the tag team titles back in Night of Champions of last year when he challenged Sami and Kevin Owens for the belts, because the guy doesn't really wrestle. He only wrestles 4 or 5 times a year max anyway. They're not going to defend them. It would put the belts in 2 massive names, sure, and it can add to the story, sure, but at least with them specifically, they're never fucking around. And if they are around, they're not really wrestling. So they would just be a prop, and if they're not really... And they would have to lose at some point too, right? I mean, one of them has to lose. Roman should hopefully lose at Mania anyway this coming year, but he shouldn't suffer a second loss. And he already lost to Jey Uso a year ago in a tag team match, but that made sense at the time, and even now in retrospect. But one of them would have to get pinned. Rock should not get pinned in a random tag match, and same thing with Roman Reigns. So I wouldn't even say it's worth it. It's a great visual, sure, but I wouldn't even really say it's worth it. Now, if they bring in Jacob Fatu, hey, make him and Solo the new Usos of the Bloodline. If the Bloodline is still a thing coming out of Mania, make Solo and Jacob Fatu tag team champions, I would not be complaining about that. Chris W. from YouTube, their first question was, he says, hey, Graham, hope you're having a great week and hope you had a great Valentine's Day. It was really nice to meet Alexis. She seems like a sweetheart. Obviously, your question goes on, but I just want to say thanks to that. I appreciate it. She appreciates it, too. She laughed when I told her the comments you left in the video about her last week. But anyway, your question goes on. Do you think NXT should pump the brakes on the Alexis King experiment? He's not getting better in the ring. His character is cringe, and his promos are absolutely terrible. I feel the more they throw him out there, the more go-away he will get. What about you? I'm not as down on him as you are. I like Alexis King. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's the next NXT champion by any means. My biggest issue with Alexis King, he's very average. Alexis King does not really excel. The former Brian Pillman Jr. we're talking here, for those unfamiliar. He doesn't really excel in the ring, doesn't really excel on the mic. I think he's got a very good look. I think he's good. I think there is something there. To me, the biggest issue with him so far in NXT is the booking. Like, he hasn't really had a meaningful program yet. He lost to Carmelo Hayes back at Deadline. He lost to some fucking rando in the Breakout Tournament, which he didn't even really need to be in. And then he won a few matches recently. And then he challenged for the championship last night. Not the main title, but the NXT North American Championship. and lost last night in like 3 or 4 minutes. Like, what was even the point of that? What was the point? Like, he was just in there like any average jabroni. So, already lost to Dragon Lee for the championship about a month ago when Obafemi first won it. I don't know what's going on with Lexis King. They got him on TV pretty quickly after signing him, which is fine. I mean, NXT is the right place for him. Obviously, they were wise to do that and not call him up to the main roster immediately. He's far from ready for that. He might be a guy that ends up fizzling out. It's only been a few months, so I'm not ready to say, oh, I give up on him, I don't care. But they're making it pretty hard for people to care about this guy when he's being slotted at a certain level. And you're right, even if he was being pushed more aggressively, being booked better, he still isn't on the same level as other people on that show. Even someone like an Obafemi, who obviously doesn't have the same, nearly as much experience as Lexis King does in the ring, in the business, whatever, he's already picking it up pretty quickly and has the size, and he's got a very good presence about him. Lexis King, like I said, I'm higher on him than you are, but there's really nothing right now that makes me excited to see Lexis King on the show. Whether it be a storyline thing or the fact that he's not really great in any one particular thing. And that's fine. That's fine. I don't think the guy's that bad at all in any one particular area. But he's also not overly special either, and that's the problem. NXT is where you develop. You kind of find that thing that works and hone in on it, blah, blah, blah. But so far, he really hasn't found that. And it's only doing more damage the more that he's out there every single week, losing more than he wins, or winning against no-namers, not really having direction. And people are going to give up on him a lot quicker if that's the case. Your second question. Which WWE debut did you think had the flattest crowd reaction? I mean, there's obviously so many. I don't know if there's any one particular debut that comes to mind. Off the top of my head right now, I remember the Ascension debuting back in about a decade ago, actually. Crazy to think it's been that long, but I think it was the final Raw of 2014. They had been running vignettes for the Ascension for a while. And the Ascension at that point were still in NXT. They had just lost the NXT Tag Team titles. They were well overdue for a main roster call-up. And they were never a great team, but they had been, like, they were done in NXT. But they were running vignettes to bring them up to the main roster. They get called up. No one cared. And even in NXT, like, the crowd in Full Sail was having fun of the Ascension as far as, like, oh, chanting "yeah" and stuff like that. If you were watching back then, NXT at that point, you would know what I'm talking about. But they were another team. There was nothing particularly special about them at all. So, unless they had the right booking, no one was going to give a shit about these guys. They went undefeated for like their first month in the main roster. They got buried by the New Age Outlaws at that Raw reunion show in January, and they never recovered. They never fucking recovered. I think they lost their first match like a month later. But anyway, their debut, I remember them coming out and attacking. I think it was Miz and Sandow or whatever, I think. And again, no one gave a shit. No one fucking cared. Or whatever they did in their debut, no one cared. So I don't know if that's the flattest crowd reaction of all time. I mean, I'm sure there's been returns, like the Bret Hart one, which got a pretty good reaction, but not as loud as it should have been when he came back in January of 2010 to WWE. I'm trying to think of other, like, NXT call-ups specifically that people just did not give a fuck about. I mean, obviously the flattest crowd reaction would be anything that anyone who debuted during COVID, during the Thunderdome era, like when Keith Lee came out, that debut was fucking terrible. Keith Lee had one of the worst call-up debuts I've ever seen. No crowd anyway, but like as far as how they handled him, what he was wearing, the music sucked, all this other sort of shit, so that didn't really help. I'm sure there's other NXT call-up debuts that didn't go over too well, like non-Night After WrestleMania ones. I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but the Ascension comes to mind, and that Keith Lee one comes to mind, although that was a flat crowd reaction because it was during COVID and there was no one there. They definitely would have reacted if there were people in the building, but the theme music would have thrown him for a loop because it was different music and the music sucked that they used instead of the one he was using in NXT. Your third question, if you could pick the best version of Shawn Michaels, which one would you pick? Shawn Michaels pre-back surgery, 89 to 98, or post-back surgery, 02 to 2010? Honestly, I gotta go latter Shawn Michaels' career, because I know he obviously had a lot of classics from 89 to 98. We're not talking like real-life stuff, and he was a fucking prick during that first run, and he had a lot of success back then. But like from 02 to 2010, Like, he came back, first match back, one of the best matches of his entire career with Triple H in that street fight at SummerSlam. Amazing match. Wins the World Heavyweight Championship in one of, if not the best Elimination Chamber match of all time at Survivor Series that year. And then in the years that followed, the matches with Kurt Angle in 2005. Again, some of the best matches of his entire career. Him and The Undertaker, same thing. 2009 and 2010, two of the best matches of his entire career. Not as great as it's tough to say. People say him and Taker is better. I mean, it probably is for Mania 25 than the Hell in the Cell match. It's neck and neck. That initial match from Hell in the Cell and No Mercy or whatever it was, Bad Blood 97, is also incredible. But yeah, from 2002 to 2010, he only had one World Championship run. That was a month long, but he had matches with Taker, Kurt, Triple H, Cena that were great in 2007, Chris Jericho in 2008. Those matches were fucking awesome. The various DX reunions. Who else did he work with in 2004? Chris Jericho throughout 2003. Benoit, Triple H some more in 2005. I mean, I got to go Shawn Michaels 2002 to 2010. I was watching primarily during that point, but I prefer Shawn Michaels at that. When you're saying the best version, it's not even really like my own opinion. I mean, it is my opinion, but like you're saying the best and not my favorite version of Shawn. 98 or 89 through 98 was amazing. Like, he had, again, great matches with Taker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, among other people. Brett, obviously. I got to go the latter version. I feel like that latter version of Shawn from 2002 to 2010 was just... He was the best competitor of the entire company beyond Kurt Angle. And the matches he was having still are... And you could say the same thing with the first one during the first run, but the matches he was having in the latter part of his career still are talked about and raved about and watched today. Again, same thing with 89 through 98, but I just feel like there was something specific about Shawn from 2002 to 2010 where he was just on another level. Your next question, your final question here. Do you think Tony Khan will pull the trigger and have the Bucks beat Darby Allin and Sting for the belts at Revolution? Or do you think Darbs and Sting will win the belts, retain the belts, rather? I mean, they've already won the belts. What ideas would you have for the ending? I think the Bucks will probably beat Allin and Sting. Now that they are the tag team champions, which is great, I'm glad they did win the belts. It made absolutely no sense. And I saw the report from Fightful that Sting didn't really want to win the belts, but like, listen, you don't go undefeated for fucking 3 or 4 years and not get a single opportunity at the tag team titles. That's just ridiculous. So they did, and they won, which they should have. I mean, I would like to see Sting and Darby win and retain and go undefeated for Sting's entire run in the company. The Bucks do not need the belts. It's not like they're going to be buried if they lose. I would like to see Darby and Sting retain. But it seems like Sting's really high in the Bucks. He had chosen them as his final opponents, legitimately in real life. He probably wants to put him over on his way out. I mean, I'd be happy if he didn't. But the Bucks don't really need it. They're trying the new heel characters, so they probably want to put the belts on them. I don't really give a shit about the Bucks at this point, or their new heel characters. I could honestly care less. I could not care less. So I'm going to say Bucks probably beat Darby and Sting, although I would like to see Darby and Sting beat them and retain the titles. Bill Meister 88, this time from YouTube. I thought I was going to say this time, but you didn't ask questions earlier. These are your first questions. I mixed you up with someone else. Your first question was, outside of the name matches of WrestleMania, what matches would you like to see? And from the title matches announced, who should retain? For me, Rhea should retain, and Gunther, unless a suitable challenger is found at Mania. But outside of that, in my opinion, all other titles should change hands. So I already talked about this on WrestleRant Radio a week or two ago, but I think Gunther, if he faces someone like a Gable, it depends on who Gunther faces. Rhea, you said she should retain. I honestly don't really care. She's already been champion for a year, so if she loses the belt to Becky, that's fine. I don't think we get a Mania where every title changes hands. Maybe most of them. I don't know about all of them. Roman should absolutely fucking 1,000% lose to Cody Rhodes. No question. Rollins, honestly, doesn't even really matter who he faces. I think he should lose. He's been champion for long enough. The character needs a freshening up. So get the belt off of him. He's kind of hurt anyway. So the 2 world titles for the men should change hands. Rhea, I could go either way. I'd be fine if she lost. She probably will lose, but I'd be fine if she retained as well. Bayley should absolutely, in my opinion, beat Io, get her big Mania moment. I think the tag titles are changing hands. Gunther, I mean, Logan Paul should drop the belt as well. Probably to LA Knight, in my opinion. So that's a lot of title changes as it is. Gunther, if he faces Gable, should lose. If he faces Sammy, I'd rather see him retain and then build to a bigger moment with Sammy down the road, him winning the World Championship from Drew or whatever, I don't know. But that's what I would do. So Sammy would lose, Gunther would retain. If it's Andrade, you can have Gunther retain. If it's Sheamus, I'd like to see Sheamus or Gable win. But if it's anyone but those two people, Gunther should probably retain. As far as what matches to do at Mania, I mentioned earlier the women's matches. So, I mean, these are a lot of matches off the top of my head, and there's probably more I'm not thinking of. But I have my hands out here to kind of count how many matches there's going to be. There's probably, let's say, 6 to 8 matches each night. So we got Roman and Cody, Rollins and McIntyre, Rhea and Becky, Bayley and Io, Judgment Day and Awesome Truth, Logan Paul and LA Knight, Gunther and let's say Sammy or Gable, probably Sami Zayn. Those are all the championship matches, right? I think I mentioned all the title matches. That's 7 matches right there. I think you can do Jade Cargill and Nia Jax. That's 8. I think you can do... I don't know about the WrestleMania Showcase shit. They did that stuff last year. They might do it again. I really don't care, but they probably will. But you could do Jade and Nia. You could do Bianca and Tiffany. I think makes a lot of sense. You can have Tiffany eliminate Bianca in the Elimination Chamber. Set it up that way. Would love to see that. Jimmy and Jay is obviously pretty much locked in. That would be a 10th match. I don't really know what you do with Orton. I think you can do Orton. I mean, we were talking about Rock last week. I don't think he faces Rock. I could see like Orton and Solo. I really hope not. I have no desire to see that. Braun Breaker might have a match. You know, I wouldn't put him in the Battle Royal, so I don't know what you do with him. I don't think they do Bobby and Karrion Kross or Bobby and his group versus Karrion and his group. They could. That would probably happen on the SmackDown before Mania, and it sucks because Bobby was left off of Mania last year, but I doubt they do that at the pay-per-view. I'm trying to think what else. What other top stars are there on each of these shows that I haven't mentioned? Oh, man, let's look at the roster real quick. I mean, that's 10 or 11 matches, as I mentioned, right there. So, the Judgment Day I mentioned. I don't think Dominic has a match. Andrade, I don't know what he would be doing if he's not challenging for the Intercontinental Championship. I think that would be most of the matches that I would do. I mean, I think you should do 4 women's matches. The tag titles I could give or take. I really don't give a shit. The women's tag titles, that is. I don't know what AJ does. You could do AJ and LA Knight. I don't know. I don't really think they should do that at Mania. I would rather see Logan Paul face LA Knight and have LA Knight win the championship personally. Yeah, I mean, that would be a majority of the matches. Unless they bring someone back or something. I don't think Cena's coming back. Yeah, I don't really know what you do with Owens or Styles or Orton. I don't really know what you do with them, but I think everyone else is kind of accounted for. Oh, and Rey and Santos too. Rey and Santos to me makes a lot of sense. So you could do that match as well, and you can have Rey give Santos his comeuppance or have Santos win. Doesn't really matter, but I think that match is happening as well. Your second question. Apologies if you've been asked this before, but what other sports are you into, and what other sports teams, who are your sports teams? I guess favorite sport teams is what you mean. Is wrestling your number one sport? I mean, if you count wrestling as a sport, then yes, it would be, obviously. I spent all this time talking about it and watching it. I would hope it is my number one. But yes, wrestling is my number one if you count it as a sport, and I would not. So if we're not, I don't really have a favorite sport. I don't follow sports. I like MMA. I very, very loosely follow the UFC. RJ's way more into that than I am, especially nowadays. I have no idea what's going on, but I do like MMA. I did train in MMA for a long time. Not recently. It's just more of a time commitment thing, but I did train in mixed martial arts for a long time, for many years, and it was a lot of fun. So I enjoy mixed martial arts, if you can count that as a sport. Beyond that, if I had to pick a sport that I enjoy the most, I played baseball for a long time too. Before I did MMA, I did baseball my entire childhood up until like early high school, late middle school. Never really cared to watch it. I've been to a lot of baseball games, and I like baseball. And I like football too. Is fun. I mean, I joke all the time. I'm a big football guy. I'm not, obviously. I do like football. I like baseball. If I had to choose my favorite sport, maybe it's more of a recent thing. I fucking love basketball. Maybe it's because of The Last Dance or the Winning Time shows and that other stuff. I mean, I fucking love that stuff. I love the games. I don't play any of these sports currently. You wouldn't catch me fucking dead doing any of this stuff, but probably basketball. I think I find basketball more fun than any of the sports. Football is just way too start and stop. Baseball can get really boring. I don't give a fuck about soccer. It probably would be basketball, although, again, you'll never catch me playing it, and I don't follow it religiously, but I enjoy basketball, even though I know nothing about what's going on this season. So I kind of follow along more what's going on in football, but that's just because a lot of the people I follow on Twitter are big football fans, and I see people talking about it constantly. Let's see, Joe M from YouTube as well. One more YouTube question before we go to the Facebook questions. He said, very excited to attend my first WWE PLE here in Perth this weekend. Oh, that's awesome. Enjoy. He said, however, I can't help but feel the card is way too predictable. I can't see either the Raw Women's or Tag Team titles changing hands. No one in the Women's Chamber seems to remotely pose a threat to Becky. I can't see McIntyre winning the Men's Chamber given the story with Rollins. Or he said, I can't not see McIntyre winning the Men's Chamber given the story with Rollins. The Grayson Waller effect is the only segment on the show where I'm thinking, wow, that's what's going to happen here. Do you agree with these predictions, or do you think there's a strong chance we see upsets in any of the matches? We could see some upsets, but I don't think we will. I think it's a pretty straightforward show. You're right, though. This does not feel like a stadium show. I'm excited for it. I think the Australia crowd is going to be great. It's a fun pay-per-view to look forward to. I'm looking forward to the show. This does not feel like it's on the same level as even Money in the Bank from last year or even Backlash from last spring. Those weren't exactly stadium shows, but like this is, and it doesn't really feel like one. Rhea and Nia is the perfect match to do. You know, it's the perfect match to do that's not at Mania, and I wouldn't do it at Mania anyway. But like the chamber matches are stacked on paper. I feel like Drew and Becky are just the only obvious contenders to win, aside from maybe Liv. And for the men's, I just don't see anyone else winning. It's got to be McIntyre, and I feel like it almost has to be Becky if it's not Liv. And then for the tag titles, I like the tag title match, but it's kind of predictable as well. So Grayson Waller effect, I hope it's a notable segment. I hope Rock and Roman or Roman show up. I don't really know if they're going to. I'm not expecting it. But it's like we already saw the Grayson Waller effect with Cody Rhodes on pay-per-view at fucking, Fastlane or whatever, 6 months ago. Payback. Whatever pay-per-view it was in September. They already did this 5 months ago, so it's really nothing new. Feels like a Raw or SmackDown segment. So again, I'm looking forward to the show. The crowd should be great. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like it's an overly eventful show, like much of note is going to happen. They could switch things up and have a surprise winner win or have Rock and Roman show up. The stuff with Brock was reportedly going to face Dominic. I don't know about that, but, Brock was going to be on the show. Roman not being on the show is just fucking ridiculous. I don't know how you don't have Roman Reigns on the show, defending or something. I don't know. CM Punk getting hurt really hurt the show, because Punk was definitely going to be on the show as well. Cody's there, thankfully. He's not wrestling, but it's better than nothing. So, yeah, it kind of feels like a basic pay-per-view. But WWE hasn't had like a bad pay-per-view in a while, in a very long time. They've all been like good to great to amazing. So it should be enjoyable, but there really isn't a strong chance of many upsets, I would say, like you said. No L from Facebook. Now we get to know. Their first question was, what would be your top 5 Elimination Chamber matches? Or I'm sorry, moments of all time, not matches. I've definitely given my favorite, best Elimination Chamber matches. Yeah, moments, a lot of them just bleed together. The first one that comes to mind that's got to be the best moment, and there's been a lot of variations of this spot, but Goldberg spearing Jericho through the plexiglass in 03. I don't like that match. I think it's one of the weaker chamber matches they've ever done. Was that 03 chamber match? It's very much forgotten. But that spot was amazing. Goldberg spearing Jericho through the plexiglass. Like I said, they do that shit every fucking year to the point where it's like, oh my god, that's bulletproof, and they broke it. Like, they break it every single year. The Otis one was cool. They did that at Chamber, I think, 4 years ago. Remember nothing else about the match. It was that tag team title chamber match that Miz and Morrison retained in back in 2020. But Otis going through the pod was pretty fucking cool. Another spot I always think of was when everyone eliminated John Cena from the 09 Chamber for the World Heavyweight Championship. That was the same one where Edge took out Kofi, entered the match, and won the championship, which was awesome. That was a cool swerve. I didn't watch that pay-per-view live. I was a fan during that time, but I didn't watch the show. But I remember reading the results and was like, wow, that's so cool that they did that. So that one stands out. Taker choke slamming, I think it was MVP off the top of the chamber in 2008. There were some cool spots in the 2017 one. That whole match is great. Bray Wyatt winning, I don't know if you count that as a moment because it's the outcome, but Bray Wyatt winning his first WWE title in 2017 in the chamber was sick. Same thing with Shawn Michaels, the World Heavyweight Championship in 2002. Another amazing chamber moment. The Morrison one, I always think of too when he fell off the top of the chamber in 2011 on top of Sheamus. The problem with that one, though, is that he just kind of like fell on him. Like, it was amazing at the time, but like in retrospect, if you go back and watch it, it was just him falling on top of Sheamus. So it's really nothing remarkable, but people really liked it, and it was a pretty cool spot at the time. And then another one that comes, I know I'm well beyond 5 here, but whatever. Another one that comes to mind is when Shawn Michaels got involved in the 2010 World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber when he entered through the steel grate. And we've seen interference in the chamber before. 2014, the Wyatt family got involved, and Kane, which was complete fucking corporate, like, stupid bullshit. They had so much interference in that one, it was ridiculous. But Shawn Michaels doing it, I think, before anyone else. I don't remember anyone else getting involved in a chamber match before Shawn in 2010. Was pretty cool. And he cost Taker the belt and forced him to face him at WrestleMania. Just an amazing moment. So any of those come to my mind as like my favorite or best Elimination Chamber moments of all time. If we're talking about the match here and not just the pay-per-view. Your second question. Do you see Roxanne Perez and Ava pulling a Vince and Bret Hart feud with Perez getting screwed over when it comes to NXT Women's Championship opportunities and chances? Definitely not. No, I don't think the end game here is Ava screwing over Roxanne. Roxanne is getting pissed at Ava, but it's not because they're building to a match between them. I think they put Ava as the GM because they know she can't really go in the ring. Of the few matches that she had on TV, they were not very good. She's extremely limited. Maybe they'll try again at some point. She's also injury prone. I know she had like 3 fucking knee surgeries a few years ago, so that clearly didn't help. She's fine as a GM, so that's probably the right role for her. Vince never transitioned into a full-time wrestler role, so yeah, could you do a Vince and Brett thing with them? Sure, but Ava's does not need to be utilized in that sort of capacity on the show. What I think this is leading to is Roxanne challenging Lyra again at Stand and Deliver, completing her heel turn either on that show or prior to that point. I don't know if you have Lyra win again. I think Roxanne is main roster bound, so she probably has to lose again. I guess she could win and then vacate it like Indy did. I don't know. But that's where I think this is headed. I don't really think Ava has much to do with the endgame here, that storyline. At Iwagu91, your first question was, did you read that Jey Uso was supposed to win the Intercontinental Championship on Raw? I read that, but you're misquoting it. It wasn't that he was supposed to win the championship. It was that people within the company believed that he was going to win the championship. It was a general impression. Now, whether they were outright told that, or they just thought, oh, tonight's the night for Jey, I don't know. Now, that came from WrestleVotes. He's a pretty credible source. If that was the case, and I think hopefully that was intentional, where they told people in digital or creative or whatever, hey, Jey's going to win tonight. And then if it gets leaked, then you find out who you told that to, and then you can find out where are these leaks coming from. The dirt sheets, quote unquote, in like news websites like PW Insider and Fightful, them reporting news is important. That's just the way of the world now with the internet, and you're going to find out everything about everything. When it comes to match outcomes, it would be pretty fucking dumb. I hate that shit. I don't know if those outlets do that routinely. I don't think they do. But the plan is for Jey to win the championship tonight. That would be dumb. Don't spoil that for me. I'd rather it be, unpredictable. So I think that shit should be kept under wraps. They should not tell people about, certain returns or surprises like that or match outcomes. That stuff should be kept under wraps, in my opinion. So they try to swerve people backstage by telling them, hey, Jey's going to win tonight, and then he doesn't. I don't think it was a case of where plans changed. I think they may have told people that to kind of get them off the scent that Gunther was going to retain. I could tell you 3 months ago that Gunther was beating Jey to retain that belt. There was no fucking way. Maybe the slightest chance. I told RJ over text a couple days ago. There's a slight chance Jey could win. It's not impossible. But anyone with a working pair of fucking eyeballs could tell you Jimmy will interfere to kick off the Mania feud between him and Jay. Jay is not winning the belt tonight. I thought Gunther could win clean, but they did exactly what I thought they would and could and probably should have done, and having Jimmy cost Jay the belt. And Gunther retains that way, which is exactly what happened. So he was never going to win. Anyone that believes that, I think it was more of a case of them trying to get rid of the leakers than anything else, which is good. Your next question. Bryan Danielson said in a backstage interview after his New Japan Pro Wrestling match with Zack Sabre Jr. that he would like to have a 2 out of 3 falls match with him down the road to conclude their rivalry since neither of them submitted the other. What are your thoughts? Yeah, that'd be cool. I enjoyed the first match at Wrestle Dream back in October. No, was it Wrestle Dream? Yeah, it was, because they were supposed to have a match at Forbidden Door 2 years ago. It didn't happen. So yeah, they did it at Wrestle Dream, had a great match. I didn't watch the rematch. I thought it was cool that they did it. I don't watch New Japan. I don't really care for the most part, unless it's a big match. So, if they want to do a third match, it probably would be in New Japan. If they want to do it in AEW, that'd be cool too. If it was in AEW, I would see. If it's in New Japan, probably not. But yeah, that's cool. Christopher L. from Facebook, their first question was, he says, who would be on your Mount Rushmore of technical wrestlers? For me, it's a tough one. I'm a huge fan of technical wrestling, and when you think back to all the technicians in the business, even going back to the days of catch as catch can't wrestling, there are large descendants of that style. As for the 4, I would go with Bryan Danielson, Bret the Hitman Hart, Billy Robinson, and the Iceman Dean Malenko. What are your choices? I don't really have a certain affinity for technical wrestling, probably the same way that you did. Not that I don't like it, but as far as knowing off the top of my head, these are the greatest technical wrestlers of all time. I think your list is pretty spot on, though. The only one I might replace, I know Billy Robinson. I know why he's very well known. I've seen none of his matches or anything, so if we're talking on a grand scale, I don't know, he was not on the same scale as Danielson or Hart or even Malenko. I would probably, if it's not you're keeping those 4 intact, if I had to change even one, I would keep them all intact, except for Robinson, and probably replace him with William Regal. Now I'm biased because he's my favorite wrestler of all time, but I think Regal should be included in that conversation as well. Your second question. When Goldberg debuted for the WWE in 2003, he received a lukewarm reception, and throughout the rest of the year until he left, that reaction from the fans never left. Yes, some of the feuds he was in did not help, and he pretty much was exposed as someone who phoned it in. But even still, he came in with some momentum, beating The Rock at Backlash. They just couldn't correctly follow up on it. Why do you think Goldberg struggled to get over on his first run in WWE? Now, I wasn't watching back then, so I can't tell you 100% from experience of watching it. They did book him properly that first month. He got a big like you said, lukewarm reception. I mean, I guess overall you're talking, but when he came in that first night, he got a massive reaction, beating Rock. It was a fun match. That first month was great. I think the biggest issue they had with Goldberg was the booking, honestly. I mean, a couple factors. To my knowledge, and again, I wasn't watching back then, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but they had brought him in 2003. That was when the whole contract with AOL expired, and he was free to come in, and I mean, he was wise to sit on his ass for 2 years as far as making that money for doing absolutely nothing. I mean, what a genius. But at that point, if he had come in during the Invasion angle, it probably would have made more sense. Coming in 2003 after all the WCW hype had died down, was smart, and it wasn't smart. Because it was smart in the sense where he had the spotlight to himself on Raw, and he didn't have to share it with Hogan the year before, or Ric Flair in 2001, or anyone else. But if he had come in during the Invasion, it wasn't smart because the Invasion stuff died down. People were kind of ready to move on to newer stars. People like Orton, Cena, Batista, Evolution, whatever. Goldberg was from that old guard. Oh yeah, Goldberg's still around. Oh yeah, he's free. He was hot 5 years ago in 98, but okay, yeah, we'll see him in WWE. We'll see what that's like. And he didn't really have many memorable matches during that period, aside from The Rock and maybe one Triple H match. And the Brock one was memorable for the wrong reasons. At Mania 20, whatever it was, 20 years ago actually. But I think the biggest thing for me was the booking. I feel like they made him undefeated for a while. They built him up as a unstoppable force, but then when he should have won the championship and people were ready to see him win the world championship, he lost. That chamber match was not the best, and he fucking lost with a sledgehammer. One of the dumbest finishes I've ever seen. That was one of those cases where, you talk about someone that should have won but lost, with Bray Wyatt and Cena at WrestleMania 30. That was one of them right there. At SummerSlam, they didn't bury Goldberg, but it was still a pretty dumb finish because he won the belt a month later when it was like he'd already cooled off. Was it a month later? I think it was. By that point, people were like, all right, we're kind of done here. His reign was very forgettable. He was champion for a few months, but by that point, people were just kind of ready to move on. And they put the belt right back on Triple H anyway, so people were like, okay, he spent that entire time feuding with Triple H. Whatever, and it just wasn't a very exciting feud. So then he loses that, and they built the Brock thing, and that was fun, but then the match was not good, and the crowd shit all over it because they knew both guys were leaving that night, after that night, so that didn't help either. So the entire run just was not great. It was one of those things where, like, I think he was able to redeem himself when he came back in 2016. Now, the last couple of years of Goldberg's career were not great here in WWE, but that 2016 to 2017 run was very good. Like, he beat Brock, and the Kevin Owens thing I thought was fucking awful, but when he beat him in 30 seconds for the belt, certainly did not need to be champion, but he was mega over. People liked him. They protected him, made him out to be like one of the biggest stars in the company, and he had that great match with Brock in Mania 33. So I think they booked him extremely well at that point. But, during that original run, the booking was a big problem. People were kind of ready. It seemed like they had WCW fatigue. The matches weren't great. He was from like 5 years earlier. I think there were a lot of factors at play there. His next question. Do you feel the R-Truth Judgment Day storyline feels a little too similar to the Sammy Bloodline storyline, even going as far as the feud eventually leading to the changing of the tag team titles at WrestleMania? Yeah, it's definitely similar. I mean, it's extremely similar, but it's not the exact same thing. The Bloodline Sammy one had a lot more depth and went on for an entire year. The R-Truth one has been long-term storytelling, but that's only been going on since Survivor Series. That's been way more comedic. The Sammy Roman stuff had like mind games involved, and it was comedic, but they had really taken their time with that. So this isn't remotely as strong as that one was, but it's fun. It's fun for what it is. Now, if they do the same exact storyline a year from now, then it's like, all right, Triple H needs to kind of get a little more creative here. For this, it works, because I don't think R-Truth winning the tag titles of Mania was ever the long-term plan. But, the Sammy Bloodline stuff, I knew as far as, like, the summer of the year earlier, they were building the Sammy and Owens versus the Usos of Mania. It was just as obvious as, it was clear as day. That's what they were going to do at Mania 39 last year. With the Truth stuff, that was never the plan. I don't know what they would have done instead, but it seemed like it was supposed to be maybe Finn and Damian one-on-one, maybe dropping the belts before then. Like a couple months ago, and then building the Finn and Damian one-on-one at Mania, which would have been cool. Now they could save that for another time. But I think it makes more sense for it to be Judgment Day losing to Awesome Truth at this point, because this storyline took off way more than they thought it would. So how do you not do that match? Even down to Jimmy and Jay, dude, you talk about like, oh, isn't this the same as that? Even Dominic and Ray is the same exact thing as Jimmy and Jay. Jay doesn't want to fight his brother. Dominic turns on his father. They get separated by the brand split. They kind of break up around the summer, and they wait until Mania to rekindle the rivalry. It's the exact same fucking thing. Triple H kind of found that same formula, which is a bit lazy, but again, it works. Jimmy and Jay I don't really care about, but the Awesome Truth stuff has really gotten over, and again, they can't do it every single year, but for the second straight year doing it again, is it similar? Yeah, 1,000%. But people are into it, so who am I to complain? And it makes sense, and I'm happy to see that pay off because they've gotten me to a point where I want to see it happen. Your last question here, Andrew Zarian has reported that there's a possibility AEW will be doing a stadium show this year. Where do you think they will do it? For me, it's either at Jaguar Stadium, or if they want to do a smaller arena to test the fields, they could do a show at a smaller soccer stadium like the Red Bull Arena in New Jersey, which seats 25,000. God, not in New Jersey. New Jersey's a fucking shithole. I don't know if you're from New Jersey, Chris, I forget, but New Jersey is just terrible. I'm sorry. And I'm a Northeast guy. Apologies to anyone who lives in New Jersey, but I've been there enough times where I just have no desire to go back. Like, I've been there for Mania. I've been there for wrestling shows. It is easily probably the worst state I've been to, and I have not been to all 50, but it just fucking stinks. I know there's certain parts that are probably nice. I'm sure I get it. But going there for shows is not my favorite. And I even went there with Alexis to go to the Medieval Times thing a couple of years ago. These surrounding areas sucked. So, not a New Jersey fan at all. So, hopefully not. But anyway, you say, where do you think they will host their first American Stadium show? I don't know. Jaguar Stadium would make the most sense because they own, it's Tony Khan, the Jaguars. He owns them, blah, blah, blah. That would probably make sense. If it wasn't there, I'm not a big stadium guy as far as, I don't know all the stadiums. Honestly, the only reason I know what certain stadiums are and what they're called and where they're located is because of WWE. I know of Levi's Stadium, for example, in Santa Clara because of WrestleMania 31. I know of Allegiant Stadium in Vegas because of SummerSlam 2021. I know of the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans because of WrestleMania 30 and so on and so forth. So, if they're going to run an arena that WWE's done before, I fucking love Vegas. So, I would love... Double or Nothing ticket prices were in the shitter last year. So, I don't know if they could afford to do a stadium show for, something like that when they can't even fill the building for their regular arena at MGM Grand or whatever it is. But something like Allegiant Stadium would be cool. It probably would be the Jaguar Stadium if I had to take a guess. I don't know what else it would be. There's probably more credible reports out there as far as what they're looking at. But they need to be able to sell the tickets is the problem. They're selling tickets to the Sting last match show at Revolution because, it's Sting's last match in North Carolina. It makes perfect sense. It's his last match, period, but it takes place in North Carolina where he has a lot of history. It makes perfect sense. But, for the rest of their shows... All In did exceptionally well, but all their other shows, even pay-per-views, have not done all that well in the past year. They have a big ticketing problem when it comes to selling tickets to Dynamite and these other shows and watering down certain markets. They got to be careful. So I don't know if they're going to do a stadium show this year beyond the UK one. And even that, they did almost 90,000 last year, which was amazing. How many tickets will they sell this year? I think they've already sold maybe 40, 45, which is great. But they need to get close to that 90,000 number so that number last year wasn't just an anomaly. So I'm not exactly sure if a Jaguar Stadium would make sense. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube and Letterboxd, by the way. He's got a Letterboxd now reviewing movies as I do. So check him out there. He's on YouTube at Real Honesty with John Ritland. Does great work. His first question was, so Madam Web, what the fuck were they thinking, he said. If that was the final draft, what was the first draft like? So that's the thing. I think after seeing more reviews about the movie, first of all, it was awful. Second of all, I had heard that there was many drafts, and they made a lot of changes, with the ADR, and that was pretty apparent. So I feel like the earlier versions of the script were better than what they did. I think it got to a point where it wasn't what you're talking about, where it was it was really, really bad, and this was the best they can come up with. No, I think it was probably a lot better. And they just made so many fucking changes for whatever reason. And there were so many script changes and stuff like that and stuff they took out and stuff they put in. It just ended up being an absolute mess. It was so watered down by the end, it turned into the just abomination that it was. And that wasn't even the worst movie I've seen in the last year and a half. It just was not very good. It wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen. I've seen people say that. It wasn't that bad. But it was still not good at all. That shit was just not good. And listen, Marvel should be embarrassed to have their name on that shit. To even be associated with that awful movie is just embarrassing. So they got to figure their shit out. I went on a big rant about this after we saw the movie. It was funny because I saw the movie and I'm like, well, that was a movie. And then it wasn't really until the car ride home, and it was a 40-minute drive home. And I'm thinking, and I ranted about it to Alexis, what are they doing with these movies? No one asked for this. I did not like Dakota Johnson in that movie at all. The acting was not good. The villain was terrible. Just the general principle of the movie was completely pointless. They showed each of the Spider-Women in their suits, but only in the future. They never showed how they got their powers or how they got their suits. Maybe they were holding out for a sequel. I don't know. I hope not. If that shit gets greenlit, I don't know what to say. It was a fun movie to make fun of, Morbius. Morbius, I think, was worse. But this was still pretty bad. What is Sony even doing? Give up on the extra Spider-Man movies. Kraven does not look like it's going to be good either. Morbius was terrible. Venom 3, we'll see. I like the Venom movies. Number 1 was better than 2, but 3 might be pushing it. They got to just cut bait, focus on the Spider-Verse stuff and the Tom Holland stuff and go from there. Because this other shit is so pointless and it's damaging whatever credibility they have at this point. That shit sucked. His next question, what are the chances Gunther loses the IC title at Mania, which I believe would put him at 666 days? Ooh, geez. If he loses the belt to Mania, it would be 666 days? Holy shit. That's kind of creepy. Will he lose it? Like I said earlier, it depends on who the opponent is. If it's Gable, there's not even a guarantee he'll lose to Gable, but I think Gable should win. I would not put the belt on Sami. Sami winning would be an amazing moment. I don't think they should rush into the Sami Zayn big comeuppance moment like, oh, he finally gets the heroic title win, whatever. I think you can save that for when he wins the World Championship, and not a title he's already held 3 times. But that would be cool. I don't think he would beat Sami. I don't think he should beat Sami. He might lose to him, but hopefully not. If it's Andrade, I could go either way in Andrade. Andrade beating him would be cool. Gunther beating Andrade would be fine. If it's Sheamus, I would not give Sheamus another shot if he's not going to win. That would be fucking dumb. So, I don't know. I think it's 50-50. It really depends on who he faces. I would have said Braun Breaker a week ago, but Braun Breaker went to SmackDown. It would be kind of dumb if they put him on SmackDown and then had him challenge for the Intercontinental Championship anyway. So I think it's going to be probably Sami. I want Gable, even though they really got to build him up pretty quickly in the next 6 weeks because he's been a non-factor for the longest time now. Oh, we won on Monday. Cool. But you really got to take your time in building this guy up and not rush into it overnight. I think it's still possible, though. So I'd say it's 50-50. I think there's a decent chance he loses at Mania, but I could also see a scenario where if he was supposed to face Brock, and I don't know if he was going to lose to Brock, but if he was going to beat Brock and hold on to the championship, and I don't know if he would have. He probably would have, because would Brock really win the Intercontinental Championship? That would have been stupid. They might have been planning on Gunther retaining at Mania. They might have him retain it anyway against another opponent, so we'll see. And your last question, non-wrestling related, is there's apparently another entry in the Alien movie franchise coming out in the summer. What are your thoughts on any of the previous entries, if you've seen them? Yeah, I actually watched Alien, and speaking of Letterboxd, I watched Alien and Aliens for the first time late last year. I reviewed both on Letterboxd. I think I gave it initially 3.5. It's a 4-star movie. I lowballed it initially. I mean, you could say it's even higher than that, but I gave it 4 stars. I gave the sequel, which I thought was even better, 4.5 stars. I thought the sequel was even better. Yeah, I like those first 2. I love Sigourney Weaver. She's awesome. She's amazing. So I really, really like those movies. I have not seen the other ones. I've heard they're not good, so I probably won't waste my time on those. I did watch... I don't remember. What was it? Predator? Predator's different. I watched... they came out with a movie in 2018. I think it was a Predator movie. I've seen the original Predator. Oh, I was about to say, there was another movie that came out recently that I watched. I actually haven't seen it yet, but they came out with Prey on Hulu a year or 2 ago. That's the prequel to Predator. I haven't seen that. I want to. I heard that was good. That's not Alien, though. I know they did Alien versus Predator. Okay. I might have to check that out, but I've seen the first 2 Alien movies, and I liked them, so I thought they were great. So, yeah. Will I see the other one coming out this year? Probably not, unless I hear it's really bad or really good. That's kind of like my litmus test as far as if it's bad enough to make fun of, then yes. If it's really good and worth a recommendation from someone like you, John, then I'll probably go see it, but we'll see when it comes out this summer. Let's see. Noob_N_Co TV, their first question was, who will challenge the Kabuki Warriors to the women's tag team titles at WrestleMania? Will it be Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark or the Unholy Union? How about the Women's Dusty Classic? It hasn't been announced. Will it happen this year? No, I don't think it is. Did they not just do one Women's Dusty Classic? Let's double check on that. I feel like they only did one, and they never did it again after that. Let's see. Dusty Classic. I probably should have typed in Tag Team Classic. I feel like they did that one to crown the inaugural NXT Women's Tag Team Champions in 2021, and they haven't done it since. Let's take a gander here. Oh, man. Because I don't really think you need to do it, honestly. I don't. I just don't really feel like they have the depth for something like that. Women's. Oh, they did do a 2022 women's. Okay. They did. Oh, dude, I honestly completely fucking forgot about that. It was won by Io Shirai and Kylie Ray, who weren't even a real team, and Wendy Chu and Dakota Kai went to the finals. Why were they even a team? Why were Wendy Chu and Dakota Kai a team? That makes no sense. I don't know, man. That second one, I honestly completely forgot about. No, they don't need to do it. I don't think they are doing it. We've had enough tournaments in NXT lately. They don't need another one. So no thanks. They don't even have NXT Women's Tag Team titles anymore. They have WWE Women's Tag Team titles that aren't even defended in NXT. They defended them once at Halloween Havoc, and that was it. And the belts have been merged now for like 9 months, so no, I don't think we're getting it. As far as the women's tag titles of Mania, I honestly could give two shits. I don't think they need to do a title defense of Mania. The belts mean nothing. Them being on the Kabuki Warriors is cool, but they've already beaten Tegan Nox and Natalya. They've already beaten Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. They've wiped through. That's like half of the division right there. Them against Shayna and Zoe, who cares? Them against the Unholy Union, who cares? They actually didn't they already beat the Unholy Union? Oh no, that was Chance and Carter. That was Chance and Carter. And the Kabuki Warriors are heels anyway. Like Baszler and Stark and the Unholy Union are all heels. So no, I don't really think they need a title defense. Maybe they do another showcase match or a multi-team match. They've done that a lot over the years. Like get all the women on the show type shit. They probably will. They'll probably do like the Kabuki Warriors either in a 4-team match or a gauntlet or like them and Liv and Raquel for the titles just to get them on the show. Who cares? But that's probably what they'll do. Your second question. Do you think that The Rock is secretly working with Cody Rhodes, as evidenced by his promo on SmackDown, and he somehow raised an L instead of holding up a 1? Is it a sign that we might see Roman Reigns losing at WrestleMania? Yeah, I saw people reading into that. I mean, it very well could have been the case. I mean, that could have been intentional. I don't think it is. I think he just did that by accident. I think people are reading too much into it, but could it be possible that it was all intentional? Yes. Is it possible that Cody and Rock are working together? Yes. We have not seen Cody and Rock really get physical beyond Rock slapping Cody. Ooh, a slap. Like, you can fake that if they're on the same side. It's very possible that Cody and Rock are on the same side, and they're only doing this to get the belt away from Roman. And Rock will turn on Roman at the show. I don't really want to see Rock attack Roman. I'd rather see him get rid of the bloodline and leave ringside and give the moment to Cody Rhodes. That is what I would like to see, have Cody Rhodes win clean on his own. Rock takes rid of the bloodline. What I would rather see ultimately is Rock stay heel, and you make Roman a sympathetic babyface, because you know they're doing Rock and Roman next year. No doubt about it, no doubt in my mind. So if they're doing the match, Rock losing to Roman, and Roman's still here, what really changes? I'd rather Roman turn babyface, go away for a while, come back, people cheer him. The bloodline is taken over by The Rock in the meantime, and Rock kind of shuns out Roman Reigns for losing the championship. Oh, I'm the head of the table now, blah, blah, blah. That, to me, is far more intriguing than building to a babyface Rock and heel Roman matchup. That's what they were going to do this year. I feel like they should change course and reverse the roles. That, to me, would be way more interesting with a heel Rock for a year, not just 6 weeks, and it wasn't a ruse the whole time. You're probably right, though. That's probably what they're going to do with The Rock turning on Roman, and it was a ruse the whole time between Rock and Cody. Unless Rock lays a beat down on Cody in the next 6 weeks, which he could, and they get really physical, which at that point, it's kind of hard to explain, like with the bloodline, or what was it, Aces and Eights back in the day. Oh my God, when Bully Ray was like, oh, I was the leader of Aces and Eights, and I took all these attacks from Aces and Eights on purpose. Like, that shit was fucking stupid. They clearly did not know from the get-go Bully Ray would be behind it. That was ridiculous. Don't do the same thing with Rock and Cody. That would be dumb. But I could see that happening. That probably will happen. I'd rather Rock say to the bloodline, hey, Roman says he could do it on his own. Let's leave him on his own, and let's go to the back. And then Cody beats Roman clean without them, and Cody becomes champion, and then Roman goes away, and Rock turns on him, and Roman comes back as a babyface, blah, blah, blah. That's what I would do. It's probably what they're not going to do, though, so we'll see. Final 3 questions from at E13A, from Twitter. Your first question was, do you think WrestleMania 40 will keep the tradition of a 3-way main event? So we included pictures of the triple threat main event from WrestleMania 20 and the triple threat main event from WrestleMania 30. Even WrestleMania 10 was not a triple threat, but Yokozuna did also have 2 challengers that night, in Bret Hart and Lex Luger in separate matches. So it's really been a tradition since then, where they had two people challenging for the World Championship on the same show for the same title. Although it wasn't a formal triple threat, but you know what I mean. They weren't doing triple threats back in 95 or 96 or whatever it was at that point. I think it was 90. What year was that? 90. It was 94 actually. Holy shit. They were not doing triple threats back then. Anyway, no, I don't think they should. That would be ridiculous. Just leave it. Roman and Cody, Rock. Listen, Rock getting involved and costing Roman the belt. I would rather that than Rock be in the match. Why would, if Rock is literally in the bloodline now, which he just said he was a week ago, why would he then challenge Roman for the belt? The whole point of Rock being mad at Cody was that Cody took away the match that they wanted to do, Rock and Roman against each other. If we get it anyway, then what does Rock have to be mad about? And Rock shouldn't turn on the bloodline before Mania. That would even be worse. So no, I don't think they'll do a triple threat. I hope to God that they don't. You can have Rock involved in some other way, wrestle someone else, maybe do the tag match. I don't know. But I would not make it a three-way. That would be ridiculous. His second question, do you want Sting to win or lose his final match? I mentioned this earlier. I would like him to win. I don't think the Bucks needs the belts. I don't really care for the Bucks. I would like to see Sting retire a champion. You can vacate him after that, whatever. I don't care. Have him go out on top. You see everyone losing their final match for the most part. I would like to see something different for Sting. He probably will lose, is my prediction. But I would like to see him win and go out a champion and go out on top. He deserved that much. Especially after losing his last match initially to Seth Rollins 10 years ago. And that was not going to be his last match, but it ended up being his final match due to the injury he suffered during the match. Have it be the exact opposite, where he goes out on top. He has this amazing moment. He ends his career as a champion alongside Darby Allin. It's not always about, put this guy over on the way out, which I would typically be in favor of. But it's not like the Bucks are going to benefit from beating Sting and Darby. They already have heat as it is. They're already established. It hardly matters. But he probably will lose, though. Last question from @U138. Would you travel to Perth, Australia? I don't know if I've shared this story before here on the show, or it's not really much of a story. I've been to Australia before. So from 06 through 08, I was involved in like a educational program. It wasn't through my school, but it was like a branded program across America where they would take students, like teachers would nominate students to go on these trips. And now you have to pay for the trips, obviously, and I was very fortunate to be able to do it. So in 06, though, it was each summer, and I went 3 summers in a row. The first summer I went to Europe for 3 weeks. No parents. There's supervisors and educational instructors, and going into the trip, you would have to know a lot about the country and do projects on it and have meetings, so that was cool. I get to make new friends from other parts of the state. And I'm from Connecticut, so I met other kids from other towns and stuff like that. Knew no one going in beyond that. But yeah, we went to Europe that first year when I was going into 6th grade, and we went to Belgium, France, England, Ireland, Belgium, France, and Wales. Maybe some other country as well. But we went to all 5 of those countries, and it was awesome. Did I said France, right? I almost said Paris. It was Paris, not Italy. We didn't go to Italy. So we did all that first time. That was Switzerland, too. We went to Switzerland as well. So, yeah, was it Switzerland? I think it was Switzerland. So we went to those 5 or 6 countries when I was there in 06. The following summer was California. I went to San Francisco for the first time as part of that trip for 2 weeks. And then the third and final trip in 08 was for 3 weeks, and that was Australia. Now, I have not been to Perth specifically, but I did go to Cairns. I went to Sydney. Forgot where else I went, but we did do a lot of traveling. I was there for 3 weeks, so we spent a lot of time in Sydney. We spent a lot of time in Cairns. I forgot where else I went. We did go into the Great Barrier Reef. I remember doing that. I have a lot of pictures. This was 16 years ago. I was going into 8th grade, so I remember it, but I don't remember the name of the parts of the country that we were in. But that was probably my favorite of the 3. I remember it the most because I was the oldest at that point of the 3 trips that I went on. But met a lot of cool people, did a lot of cool things. I don't know. I just really liked Australia. I had a family that visited there a few years ago, right before COVID, right during like the fires, when the fires were going on, and they loved it too. I wouldn't live there probably, but to travel to, I would definitely go. I will not be there on Saturday. I would probably be there by now if I was. The travel was fucking brutal. I remember the travel being being a very, very long flight there and a very long flight back. We had to stay we left early in the morning on, I think it was July 3rd, and we skipped a whole day because it takes a good 24 hours to get there from where we are on the East Coast. They're close to 24 hours. So we stopped on the West Coast in California at the airport, and we were there for a little while for a layover. It was wild. I remember on the way back, I watched actually Cloverfield for the first time. What a dumb choice by me. I watched it on the plane on the way home, and I almost threw up. I have never gotten sick on a plane before. I almost did that day because it's found footage style, and you're in an airplane. That was really dumb. I had to go into the bathroom, and I'm like, I might have to throw up. Like, this is just, this is fucking, I feel really sick right now. And thankfully, I did not. I finished the movie. It was a good movie. But, yeah, so long story short, I did go to Australia once before. I would go again. I will not be there on Saturday, but I would love to go to a country like that for a wrestling show. Still on my bucket list is seeing a show in England. I've been to England twice, like I said, as part of that trip in 2006, but I went again with family in 2019. I would have loved to have coordinated it with like an NXT UK show. That didn't work out. But I was there for a few weeks back in 2019 for that summer, and it was nice, but I would like to go back, and it wasn't the best trip, so I would like to do it again and go to a wrestling show like an All In or a WWE show or something like that. But Australia would probably be on the list as well. As far as like what countries I would like to go to see a wrestling show in, England would be one, Australia might be two, and Japan, just to say that I've done it, would be cool as well. I've never been to Japan, but to see like a New Japan show there would be a pretty cool experience. And I feel like I'm a big, I've really gotten into sushi the last couple of years, so I'm sure I'd have to eat more than just sushi, but I love sushi, and I'd be able to have that over there, and I'm sure I would really enjoy it. So Japan would be on the list as well. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 534, I believe, here today of hashtag AskGSM. Yeah, episode 534 for February 21st, 2024. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in your questions. I appreciate it. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.